I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, my name is Moira Anderson. I'm the Director of Public Programming for Crystal Bridges at the Momentary. And welcome to day 2 of our Arts and Wellness Festival at Crystal Bridges. It's been a truly amazing weekend so far, and over the past 2 days, we've had full campus activation with everything from meditation in the galleries and the grounds, workshops, forest bathings, sound baths, and talks by our campus architects and Goldie Hawn last night. The weekend has really truly highlighted that powerful connection between well-being, architecture, and place. And so this afternoon, I can't think of a better way to continue the festival than with this conversation between Susan Magsamen and Renée Fleming that's exploring your brain on both art and music. There's been a pivot for the program. As you have heard, Renée has encountered some travel challenges, but we are so thrilled that she is able to join us virtually this afternoon, tuning in. So we still get to have the rich conversation that was planned. This weekend's programming is made possible through the generous support of our Arts and Wellness Festival sponsors, Procter & Gamble and Mercy. Their partnership truly reflects our shared commitment to the whole person well-being. We're also deeply grateful for our ongoing sponsors of the Lectures and Talks program series, Cadillac of Bentonville, Andrea Albright and Patrick Bannon, Stella Boyle Smith Trust, Kathy and Mike Mayton, Demara Teitzer, and Omar and Evan Torre. And finally, we're honored to have Arkansas PBS joining us to live stream this afternoon's program. We're continuing to be grateful for their partnership that helps us share these conversations with audiences across Arkansas and beyond. So please join me in thanking all of our sponsors for this program. One last housekeeping note before we begin. You are going to notice a QR code right there that is going to periodically be flashing during the conversation. This is where you can scan and submit questions throughout the talk. Towards the end, we'll leave a little bit of time to address some of the audience Q&As. Moderating this afternoon's discussion is Dr. Maya Adam. She's a physician, medical educator, and storyteller whose work focuses on improving health communication and education through narratives and arts. She serves on the faculty at Stanford University School of Medicine, where she teaches courses on nutrition, compassion, and creative approaches to medical education. Her work bridges science and empathy, helping people connect to wellness in deeply human ways. Dr. Maya is going to introduce our speakers for this afternoon, so please join me in welcoming Dr. Maya Adam and Susan Magsamen to the stage.
Thank you, Moira, for that lovely introduction. Is this working? Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, great. It is such a pleasure to be here with you all this evening. I have the honor of announcing our 2 speakers. Firstly, I'll start with Renée Fleming, a highly acclaimed singer that I'm sure many of you are very excited to hear from. Renée is a 5-time Grammy Award-winning soprano and recipient of the U.S. National Medal of Arts. Renée has sung in the world's greatest opera houses and on stages from the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony to the Super Bowl. She's also a passionate advocate for the powerful impact of the arts on health and the brain. Her anthology, Music and Mind, Harnessing the Arts for Health and Wellness, was published this year, and she serves as a World Health Organization Goodwill Ambassador for Arts and Health. Also with us today is Susan Magsamen, the founder and executive director of the International Arts and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, and a co-founder of the NeuroArts Blueprint, a joint initiative with the Aspen Institute. Her groundbreaking work in neuroaesthetics explores how aesthetic experiences measurably change the brain, body, and behavior, and how this knowledge can be applied across medicine, education, and public health. She's also co-author of the New York Times bestseller, Your Brain on Art, How the Arts Transform Us. And I've seen a few people carrying the book this evening, so that's lovely. Please join me in welcoming Renée Fleming and Susan Magsamen for the Art of Healing.
I have to say, this is the easiest job I've ever had because you are in the most aesthetic place there is. So I think just sitting here, I can prove my point, which is great.
Lovely. So we're going to start with a presentation by Renée Fleming. And Renée, I'm going to be advancing your slides, so please feel free to direct me as we begin.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be with you all. I wish I could see you.
This is your brain.
And I wish I could be with you. I mean, this is the time for flying difficulties, I think. So, but I'm going to speak a little bit about our moral imperative to increase positive social connection, the role the arts can play, and the impacts on our health. Now, normally, I would ask us to sing together, but unfortunately, I don't know that that can work very well right now. So, but I'll tell you, when we do sing together, our brain waves align, we boost the bonding hormone oxytocin, lower the stress hormone cortisol, and stimulate the vagus nerve. And all of these things are really good for us. And we know this because of a growing body of scientific evidence backed by technology. Next slide, please.
This is your brain and body on art.
NeuroArts is the new
Creating
field
art and experiencing art is uniquely human.
Renée, is this the slide you wanted, or did you want the video to play before this?
I can't really see.
There is.
No, we're not at videos yet. These are just slides.
Okay.
Yeah, so go to the next slide.
Okay.
There you go, NeuroArts. Okay, fantastic. And then you're going to shift that diagram. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Very fancy. Okay, thank you. NeuroArts. You hear more about this from Susan, but it's a new field that includes all aesthetic experiences, allowing us to flourish, beginning with one of my favorites, the benefits of just being in nature. So why might this first video be relevant? Go ahead and play the video. Okay, great, because I don't. All right, so next slide. So birds like us have evolved beat perception and vocal learning, unlike, surprisingly, other primates. And evolution, next slide, is the key to understanding why engaging with art, a human invariant, is still so incredibly powerful. Archaeological artifacts dating back more than 200,000 years prove this. Music likely predated speech, and our vocal instrument, the larynx, was exactly the same in Neanderthals. I totally love that. I want to hear their opera. Tribal by nature, we chanted, danced, and drummed our way to collaboration and survival. Next slide. The pillars of current research are childhood development, chronic pain, mental health, aging, and basic science. So beginning at birth, lullabies are found in every culture. And surprisingly to me, for postpartum depression, singing in a choir significantly reduces symptoms. So I assume some of you sang in a choir or played an instrument growing up. But children who study a musical instrument develop language and reading faster, have better comprehension, memory, and focus, and lasting changes in the brain after only 2 years. So in a hospital setting, teens with cancer are better able to process difficult emotion through writing lyrics than with talk therapy. So here are two examples of music therapists at work. First, in early childhood, and then meet Evie, born without eyes, terrified and about to undergo seizure testing. So the first video, please. Compared with other medical interventions, these therapies are low cost, non-pharmaceutical, and non-invasive, giving a 3-to-1 return on investment in dementia care alone. And music memory is the last to go. I saw this with my husband's aunt, who could not recognize her family or even speak, but could sing lyrics to songs from her youth perfectly. And some of the strongest results for those with neurologic disorders come from using rhythm and music to treat Parkinson's, the effects of stroke. So meet the Unforgettables, the dementia choir, and Cindy with Parkinson's, who can't easily walk but can dance. First video, please. Important area of research. So just listening to music generates endorphins in the brain, minimizing the need for opioids. So I have a friend actually who had a terrible brain hemorrhage, and the only thing that alleviated her agony was playing Jimi Hendrix as loud as she could. It's all taste-based. And with a worldwide epidemic of loneliness and isolation and widespread trauma, creative arts offer a chance to express hidden pain. So the brain is still the most complex object in the known universe, with endless plasticity to form new pathways. So my favorite example of this, melodic intonation, uses singing to regain speech for those on autism spectrum, stroke, or traumatic brain injury. And you'll see this with now 2 examples. The first is a stroke patient who learns to speak in the very first session. And then we'll meet Forrest Allen, whose recovery after a snowboarding tragic accident is inspiring. So first video. So as an artist and advocate, it's been really exciting to see these developments, and major institutions have been responding. The World Health Organization was working to build global support for arts and health. The World Economic Forum at Davos has actually started a new global arts and culture council because of this advocacy. And I wanted to share this exciting film and field with the public. I created this anthology, Music in Mind. So I believe performing arts venues, next slide please, can become community centers. Yeah, next one after that. There we go. Community centers promoting well-being and social connection. Next slide. And I'm really hoping to hear, ask your doctor if creative arts therapies are right for you. Side effects include better mood, cognition, and the occasional earworm. So thank you so much. And on this very high note, I'd like to leave you with some evolutionary joy. Next video.
Renee, thank you so much. That was fascinating. I'm going to hand the pointer to Susan. Susan, thank you so much. Take it away.
You're welcome. Renee, you're going to hang around?
Oh yeah,
Great,
absolutely.
great. You're a little teeny speck on a big screen. Can we make her bigger by any chance? No. Okay. This is really great. This is like improv. Well, it's really wonderful to be here with Renee, and really extraordinary to be here at Crystal Bridges campus. So Renee and I have worked with each other for a number of years. She's also the co-chair of the NeuroArts Blueprint Initiative, and I'll share a little bit about that. But in 2003, I wrote a book with Ivy Ross called Your Brain on Art. And it took us 4 years to write the book. And we interviewed over 120 people from around the world. And in just 4 days, the book became a New York Times bestseller. I know. I remember when Ivy and I heard about it, we were in an airport, and our publisher was calling us on the phone, and we thought this is either really good news or really bad news. But he said that, you know, books about art don't become New York Times bestsellers. And I think when we heard that, we were like, well, this is not about art. This is really about creative expression. This is really about life. So over the last 2.5 years, what we've learned was that the book gave people permission to make art again. And it also validated what they knew about art. And you have to be honest, if you really think about it, neuroarts is an amazing field, but artists have always understood the power of the arts. And it's really only recently that scientists and science is really catching up with the artists. And I think it's now a beautiful marriage of the arts. And I'm actually married to a neuroscientist, so I can tell you it's true. But we're now seeing this work show up in so many different areas. So Renee shared some of the health applications, but it's showing up in education, it's showing up in museums, it's showing up in public health, it's showing up in literally every sector of society. And policy at all level is beginning to be created. And that's really important, because what we really want is to see this work become part of everyday life, a part of practice, and part of something that you own, that you have self-agency around. So in the book, Ivy and I make this statement that we're standing on the verge of a cultural shift, and where the arts and aesthetic experience can provide accessible, potent, proven health and well-being solutions to billions of people. And when we wrote that, we really believed that it was going to happen. And I have to say, sitting here today, it is happening, and it's happening at an accelerated rate and with a lot more absolute passion and energy, and it's really an extraordinary time. So I love this slide. I think about it as sort of a periodic table of the arts and sort of a pantry of all of these different art forms that we already have available to us. And with technology and with different generations come different kinds of arts experiences. So this is really, in some ways, a limited example. But think about how you could create lots of different combinations of the arts to solve for all kinds of problems in health, well-being, learning, education, community engagement. And we know now that the arts, through research, through neuroscientific and psychological, cognitive behavioral research, that the arts do something that nothing else does. And by that, what I mean is that the arts, I want you to really think about this, the arts simultaneously ignite a cascade of neurological and psychological systems that really interact with each other regardless of the kinds of experiences you're having. So think about your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system, your muscular system, your immune and endocrine system, higher cognitive function, all being activated at the same time when you're dancing, when you're singing, when you're doing different kinds of visual art. So there is nothing like this that we know that we use now to really amplify human potential. So in many ways, the arts and aesthetic experiences, and obviously nature is one of the most aesthetic experiences, are powerful neuromodulators. And I think for a long time, we somehow forgot that this is how we're wired. This is really who we are as human beings. And so to be able to come back to this and understand it from a neurophysiological perspective and a behavioral health perspective just makes so much sense. And I think we are starting to see the value of that in really amazing ways. So the science is called neuroaesthetics, but the field is called neuroarts. And the definition that I like to use is that neuroaesthetics or neuroarts is an interdisciplinary field that's rooted in the science of neuroaesthetics and other ways of knowing, where we explore how the arts and aesthetic experiences measurably change our brains, bodies, and behavior. And I think really importantly, how that gets translated into practices in all of these different areas, whether it's health or public health or education or social connection. And so it's a really extraordinary time. And, you know, when I think about things like women's health or bioethics or even planetary health, those are new fields that have only been around for a relatively short time, where we've codified all of the interdisciplinary requirements of really complex fields. So neuroarts is a field that's literally being birthed before your very eyes, and the potential of that is just really, I think, unlimited and super exciting. I'm not going to go into a lot of science tonight, but this is an illustration by a neuroscientist artist named Greg Dunn. And I think what it shows is the gorgeous complexity of our brains. And if you just take a couple of words on the page, you can see our sensory systems and how they are integrated within brain structure. You can see things like the cerebellum and the brain stem. You can see the limbic system, where our emotional brain is. You can see the prefrontal cortex, where we really use that for our operating systems, for executive function, for creativity. And in that sort of orange area in the middle is an area that we're starting to learn a whole lot more about, called the saliency network. And the saliency network is connected to something called the default mode network. So when you're bringing in extraordinary sensory experience through arts or aesthetic experiences, which are some of the most potent ways that we bring in the world, we're capturing all this information and we're creating really strong neural pathways. And those pathways connect you to everything you do, whether it's movement or thinking or emotion. This is the structure, this is the mechanisms that we're using. But when you stop, when you pause, what really is amazing is that you really begin to start to go into that inner self. So you mind wander, you daydream, you think to yourself what's beautiful, what you like, what you don't like. And that's a part of, I think, one of the powerful things about what arts allow you to do. It allows you to take all of this salient experience and really make decisions about what is you, what is uniquely and only you. And so in 2000, and this is sort of interesting, so 25 years ago, it was the first fMRI study that was done by someone named Samir Zeki in University College London. And he wanted to ask the question, where is beauty in the brain? And so he did this amazing study. Everybody looked at the same picture, and he could see in the prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain lit up. It's like, oh my God, we know where beauty is. That's extraordinary. But then he made either the biggest mistake or the most amazing intervention, and he said, tell me why it's beautiful. And he thought everybody would say the same thing. And everybody had a different reason for why it was beautiful. And I think that's one of the things we're learning about neuroarts now, is that it is the most, it's the closest thing to precision medicine, because each of us are so different. So how we choose art, when Renee was talking about Jimi Hendrix and pain, we all have different ways that we process the arts to help us in our bodies. And so the more we take agency and own that, it's pretty extraordinary how we can really create our own periodic tables of how arts change us and help us in all these different ways. So I love this picture. In many ways, the elephant in the room is a metaphor for the arts. It's ancient, it's old, it's been with us forever. We forgot it. It's in the room all the time, but we sometimes, it's like being that fish in the water, right? You're in the water, so you don't know you're in the water. But this, depending upon where you touch the elephant, you're going to get something different. So you're touching it for Parkinson's, you're going to get dance. You're touching it for Alzheimer's, you're probably going to get music and singing. If you're thinking about it for mental health, you're looking at a mixed methods, different modalities, but it's always going to be different. And then the last thing that I like about the elephant in the room is that it is endangered. And if we don't nurture it, and we don't take care of it, and we don't use it, we're going to lose it. And we're losing it in schools, and we've been losing it. It's a luxury, it's a nice to have, not a have to have. And until we start to change the culture and society to understand that it is not a luxury, but it's a necessity. And so I think that's happening more and more, but in many ways, we're at the beginning of that. But the good news is that we are seeing neuroarts show up in every single sector of society. And just pick an area, and I think of it very much like a deep well that you can go to, whether it's in business or in public health or education, and certainly at an individual level to be able to activate that. And so just a couple of things that I wanted to share related to some specific art forms. In child development, this work is burgeoning. And it's really critical, because if we're going to solve some of the problems in healthcare, the way Alice Walton and team are thinking about here, we need to work upstream. We need to work in prenatal care, in maternal health, in early childhood development. So we know that just music and movement for young children changes their brain, not just the neuroplasticity, but the myelination around the neurons, making the connections stronger, and literally changes brain structure. So children's brains get bigger when they are engaged in music and movement activities. So if you want to be healthier long term, you want to build the resilience and this neuroplasticity early on. And so it's a really extraordinary opportunity. And just from a prenatal health and a maternal health perspective here, we also know that singing and movement with young children and moms lowers depression, postpartum depression. So moms are increasing oxytocin between children and moms, and they're also taking less antidepressants. And that has huge implications for family health. Renee mentioned Parkinson's. We're now seeing gait, mood, sleep, and cognitive changes with Parkinson's patients through dose and dosage with dance, and it's any kind of dance. During COVID, folks that were using dance for Parkinson's started to dance online, and we started to see that even though they weren't dancing with each other, there was a mirror neuron effect where they actually were managing symptoms at a much greater rate because they tended to be dancing more, but they also were slowing down the progression of the disease. That's extraordinary. That's amazing finding. And so there are now over 50 Parkinson's and dance peer-reviewed studies, and we're learning more and more about how this can be used in lots of different other applications, meaning things like stroke or recovery from accidents, orthopedic solutions and things like that. Another great example Renee also mentioned is singing, playing, and listening to music for people with Alzheimer's. And this has just been ubiquitous in seeing how this work is really literally waking people up. And I'll just add that through the work of the NeuroArts Blueprint, we did several economic analyses looking at if we were going to do this, what would the return, the true value be on society? And what we saw is that if you had one music intervention once a month for a year with 20% of people with mild, moderate, or advanced Alzheimer's in this country, we would save $5 billion a year. So when you think about the economic model, and I think this is something that Crystal Bridges campus with Heartland Whole Health is really thinking about, how do you turn this healthcare model on its ear? And we're seeing through these arts experiences that there's a huge opportunity to reinvest savings into other parts of society. Just a couple of other things that I want to share in thinking about the role of integration of technology, AI, and arts for things like chronic pain and anxiety. And we're seeing significant decreases when we're customizing the way that we deliver music for pain in particular, and also Alzheimer's. We talked a little bit about I talked a little bit about creative forces, and this is work that's been done with the military. So the VA, the DoD, and the NEA have been doing work with PTSD and trauma and TBI work, and seeing tremendous gains in coming back from these really traumatic experiences. And part of the science coming out of here was just in 45 minutes of an art activity, cortisol was lowered by 25%. So this has real transfer applications to things like disaster relief or being in a war zone and managing some of the worst moments of your life by being able to engage in some of these affordable, accessible, and immediate types of opportunities. And then the last one I'll share is David Byrne has been doing some really amazing work in movement and dance and looking at this idea around synchronicity and movement. And so this was a project that he did right after COVID called the Social Distance Dance Club. And he was able to show that just 6 feet away from each other, we still had that entrainment and synchronicity. And so dance, 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 right? That's, if you could do one thing, dance. So I want to shift for just a moment and talk a little bit about the NeuroArts Blueprint Initiative. This is a partnership with the Aspen Institute, and our goal is to make the arts and aesthetic experiences part of mainstream medicine, public health, education, and society. Just a little idea, right? Just a little goal. We've been working now for almost 5 years, and the work has been really amazing to see how it's coalescing all over the world. And we have a theory of change. And the theory of change is that when you look at 5 recommendations, meaning more research, honoring the practitioners, advancing education and training, building policy and funding, and then last, capacity, leadership, and communications for the practice, but also for the general public, we believe that we can change the world. And so we have 3 strategies that you see here: evidence, infrastructure, and community. And in each of those 3 strategies, we have a number of initiatives. And I'm not going to go through them in any detail, but just to say that in evidence, we've built a world-class scientific advisory board the Renée Fleming Investigator Awards. This is our third year where we're funding early investigators in team science. So we're never going to make these big inroads with a single discipline. So we have artists come together with neurologists and anthropologists and digital technology folks. We also have developed something called the Community NeuroArts Coalitions, which are hyper-local communities that are bringing all the stakeholders together and saying, what problems do we want to solve for? And we've been doing this for 3 years. In 2 weeks, we're going to be launching another 10 cohorts around this country. And I'm really proud to say that Bentonville, Crystal Bridges campus will be one of those. So very excited. And we've also are bringing together academic education networks, and we launched something called the NeuroArts Resource Center in the spring. And this is a virtual watering hole. The idea is anybody, anywhere in the world interested in this work can come to the NeuroArts Resource Center, share your work, and find other people. And also find something that you're looking for. So there is a what are you looking for screen when you first come on, and you can say, I'm looking for information about what's happening in Africa for Parkinson's, and you can find somebody. You can say, I'm looking for something around cardiovascular disease and nutrition. You can find something. And so we started it in May, and it's already had over 500,000 visitors, which is pretty extraordinary when you think about just the amazing interest in this work. So if we do all this and we do it right, we really think that we can change the world, that this work will be embedded in healthcare, public health, education, that spaces and places like this will be built that really impact the way we feel. And, you know, spaces and places are the holy grail, right? You're always someplace. And so what does lighting do? What does sound do? What does color do? What does this do for us physiologically? And then how do we change that space? And then really looking at education. How do we change the education systems? And you're not only educated in schools, right? You're educated in work. You learn everywhere. So what does learning look like? And then ultimately, we want to think about how neuroarts are equal to the way we think about things like exercise, nutrition, or even sleep. So we're, I think, well on our way. And as you heard, there are a lot of partners. So we're working with folks all over the world, from AARP to the World Bank to the World Health Organization, Americans for the Arts, and many, many other organizations that are growing this. So one final thing I want to talk about that I am most passionate about is the work that's happening here at the Crystal Bridges campus. And I think if you all have wandered here, you know that art, architecture, nature, education, wellness aren't just individual streams. They are woven together in such a beautiful way to really create whole health. And so Alice has talked a lot about this, in really talking about this idea of how do you create an integrated space where it really does become that wellspring. And it's so extraordinary that we're over top of a stream here. It's remarkable. And so over time, this work has begun to really take root. And over the last year or year and a half, this institution has started to really think about how do these 5 entities begin to weave together to really become an integrated health system and a whole health space where we can start to amplify what's happening in Crystal Bridges and the momentary, what's happening in Heartland Health, Whole Health, and what's happening at Awesome, and what's happening with Art Bridges. So how do you bring the strengths of each of those groups together to create so much more opportunity for all of the different stakeholders that we serve? So things like looking at bringing wellness on the campus for the staff and the faculty here, but also bringing that into the community in Bentonville and beyond. And thinking about collections of how you can train and cross-train, whether you're thinking about this for physical health or mental health and well-being, or for learning and for education. So having an open campus that allows that to happen is really extraordinary. So there's a lot of things happening here within the staff and the community and with the local community. But what is also really exciting is that all of the learnings, I think of this as a learning lab in so many ways. There's so much great things that are happening here that we're figuring out how to put together. We're now bringing other institutions from around the country and around the world here to learn what we're doing and to help them model this in other places. So this is an image that happened from a couple weeks ago where Art Bridges had a call for proposal to create an art and wellness program at a museum around the world. They thought they would get, 50, maybe 60 applications. They got almost 200 applications. Extraordinary ideas. Traditionally museums have not thought about well-being. They have arts and education, which is fabulous, but well-being is a whole new pillar in museums. And so we brought the winners here to start to really create a learning community, a real network, to take that back out to others. So when I think about what's happening here, I think about this as an exemplar for the world, to be able to take the lessons learned here and start to amplifying them through this lens of neuroarts and well-being. And just one other example that, thinking about how these gatherings and convenings here and other places are starting to really be the model on how to share this work. And finally, just what we're learning now about what's happening with Awesome. This is another great example of teaching people how to have tolerance for ambiguity, how to be compassionate doctors, how to really think about empathy, as you've talked about, and how to really, really become a true doctor in the truest sense of what it means to be human and what it means to heal. So this work is happening here, but it will also be a model for so many other healthcare institutions around the world. So it's a very exciting time, and it's really a wonderful opportunity to really learn and grow here. So let me stop with this quote, which is one of my favorites. Art is our one true global language. It speaks to our need to reveal, heal, and transform. It transcends our ordinary lives and lets us imagine what is possible. And I think when you think about what we have imagined through Alice's and the team's vision here, anything is possible. So thank you so much.
Susan, that was fascinating. Thank you.
I think I went over my 15 minutes.
It doesn't matter. It was worth it. Let's leave that quote up there a little bit longer. I have a couple of questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to you all to think up some questions. I know some of them have already been submitted, and they're apparently being beamed forward onto this iPad. But before we get to those, I'd love to ask Renée, firstly, to just tell us a little bit more about that moment in your career when you started to see the connection between what you were doing as an artist and health. Because I know as an artist, I can imagine, I was also an artist in a previous life, and I felt the gift that you give to an audience when you bring them delight through your art. But what was it like, Renée, in that moment when you started to feel the power of your art for actually, improving the health of the person that you were giving that gift to? Can you tell us about that?
Well, it's complicated because I had my own performance issues in terms of a lot of pain in advance of a high pressure performance I suppose it related to performance anxiety. And one of the ways in which I was able to overcome that was to learn to change the rubric from feeling judged by the audience and feeling negative energy coming towards me, and switching that around to me being a conduit for beauty, a conduit for what creators had done in terms of writing this beautiful music. And then I started to really connect with the audience in a much better way. I had always been told by audience members, wow, your music saved me in a terrible time of loss or in a time of illness. But this made it even better. And so now my experience with audiences, I sang in Toronto last night, is so emotional because I also am sharing with them what I've learned about neuroarts and about the power of our engagement with the arts. I'm like the poster child. I think Susan Magsamen is a rock star, and so I'm speaking her language.
How do you tell my husband that?
Thank you. That's excellent. Susan, a question for you. How broad do these boundaries go? We've talked about music and dance. What about people who find great solace and joy in like knitting or crafting, or how far does the definition go when we're talking about the arts?
That's a great question. I define neuro arts and the arts and arts in general as creative expression. And so that can be crocheting, it can be knitting, it can be gardening, the slowest art form. It can be collaging, writing really bad poetry, which I do. Renee thinks she's a poster child, but I am also a poster child because I can't sing, I can't dance. I write really bad poetry. But here's the thing. You do not have to be good at or talented to have tremendous, significant impact of this work. And that's also really important. I think we learned in 3rd grade that if you weren't good at it, you shouldn't do it. And we all shut down, or many of us shut down. And so being able to use this work, and I have people write me all the time saying, I'm using creating digital art. I'm using AI to help me, create poetry, and then I'm editing. It's really your voice. And I think there's something really important about that, is that nobody can tell you what your voice is. It is yours. And that's so empowering. And, you don't have to share it. And there's benefits of never sharing it, right? You can keep it, you can burn it, but you've changed your physiology just by that act of making and creating. Singing in the shower is an art form, right? Singing in your car, dancing. And again, it really is an open question for what is creative expression for you. So, and if you all think about what you did when you were a little kid, you might find a nugget of something that you loved that you left behind because somehow someone said, you got to choose, right? And I think we know now in medical school, these medical students are medical students and they're cellists. We have one here tonight. There are amazing ways that people are integrating all of their whole selves.
Wonderful. Okay, a question from the audience for Renee. Renee, what role do you think that technology like virtual reality or AI-generated art could play in future creative health research?
I think there's tremendous potential, and we already use music playlists as tools for calming down, for relaxing, for anxiety, for energy if we want to work out, or walking. I try to pick something that's the right rhythm that keeps my pace up. So we do that, and I do think that there can be ways of learning how to engage with art in even a more meaningful way. Now we have access through Bloomberg to museums all over the world, and all of this is, I think, really beneficial. I mean, I tend to go to visual art museums everywhere I go, everywhere I sing. And so having access to that, I think, in terms of technology, but what we can do is create playlists that are tailored for a specific intervention with a patient. Whether it's rhythm based or whether it's trying to it's already done with psilocybin, and psilocybin is about to become something that's really kind of used as a benefit in healthcare. And they all have music attached to them. But all of the arts, I think, are really important.
Excellent. Okay, Susan, another question for you. In your research, what have you found to be the most effective way to help participants feel the science, to move from understanding neuroaesthetic concepts intellectually to embodying them experientially?
So, and you do a lot of great work in this area too. I actually think the theoretical conversation of explaining this is less important than just doing it. So, like if we had all of you stand up, which we should do. Renee, oh, she's gone. Oh gosh. Okay, so now we can do that. If you stood up and you sang a song, you would feel what we're talking about. And so I think it's really important to do it. Oh, there she is. Is she coming back? Okay. So I think it's really important to do it. And I do a lot of work with corporations, with CEOs, and they're like, well, we don't have time. This is a waste of time. You know, we don't want to take 20 minutes away from our work life. But once they experience it, yay! You're full screen, Renee. Yay.
Okay.
When you were... Renee, I just said that when the question was, what's the best way to explain the science? And I said, you have to do it. And if we had everybody stand up and sing, they would feel it, they would get it, and then the science would make sense to them.
No question. And, think about singing and memory. It's all if we learned everything through a song, we would still remember it all.
We learned our alphabet that way. So.
Okay, Renee, one more question for you. Is there a difference in how our brains respond to creating or performing art versus experiencing it as an audience member?
You mean experiencing it in a passive way as opposed to active?
I mean, the difference between like performing and the benefit that gives you as an artist to share your performance with the audience versus the benefits that the audience get by hearing and being inspired by the performance.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a difference. I mean, so first of all, performance is embedded in the word. We have to perform, we have to kind of reach a certain level, and we also are judged by that, no question. So, that's why you're either, fortunately, what I do is objective. So people might like it or they might not, but it's not like you lost or you won. So that makes a difference. But in the audience is kind of receiving, and I think that's why interactive performances with audience are sometimes really wonderful and better in some ways. And I think the more creative we can become about sharing our performance experience so people aren't just sitting there. But the other thing is the creativity aspect of being a creator, the composer, the person who did the direction, who created the libretto, et cetera, for this kind of work. That's an incredible thing. I directed my first opera last summer, and I was so vitalized and excited by the experience, and it was just so joyful. So we should all try to be creative. I think it's incredibly good for us to do something, no matter how small it is. Gardening, that's one of the creative things that I enjoy, putting textures and colors together. But there's no question that there's a difference between receiving, sharing, etc. I mean, it's all good.
Wonderful. And I just have to comment that your voice quality is perfect, just in case you wanted at some point. I'm just putting it out there.
Good. Okay. I just wish I could see you all.
No pressure, no pressure. Okay, a question for the audience. This is off script. How many of you have had a moment in your life when you felt so low and you either heard a piece of music or saw a piece of art or went to a show or had a moment with art where you just were like, I feel better now? Has anybody felt that way? Yeah, okay. So Renee, almost every hand is up in the audience. I think we were speaking, Susan and I, before this conversation about how we just know it, right? We just know the power of the arts because we've experienced it, how your entire physiology can change when you hear a beautiful cellist performing in the middle of an open space, and that sound just overcomes you, or whatever it is that is your art form that has the capacity to do that to you. And so I just think I'm so encouraged to hear about these developments, to know that there are scientists studying this, that there is a name for it, neuroarts, and that there are performers, world-class performers like Renée, who are devoting part of their careers to furthering this kind of connection between the arts and health. So I would like to just first give a big round of applause to Renée and to Susan. And then I know we had some extra time set aside, but Renée, you are not here with us, so I'm assuming we are not to hear you sing tonight. Is that correct? You can just nod if we're not going to know.
Yeah, with latency, it just doesn't work well on
Got
Zoom.
it. Absolutely. And we are so
Wait,
grateful.
we could sing to Renée.
Oh,
But you
Okay,
know,
are you guys game? Okay, everybody up. Renée, we're going to sing to you. Okay, why don't we do, all right, why don't we do, how, do you guys know This Land Is Your Land? All right, let's do that. Okay, remember, I can't carry a tune. All right, so, you ready? This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
Robbie, everybody, sounded great.
thank you. Okay, to conclude our conversation, folks, I would just like to let everybody know that over the weekend at every sunrise and sunset, visitors can experience a special sound installation in the James Turrell Sky Space along the Art Trail. Apparently, the musical track you'll hear was created from data collected while participants viewed art. So these are EEG devices that capture their brain activity and then transform it into sound. How fascinating. So you can actually see people's brains on art. The project captures a lot of what we've been talking about tonight, the ways that art, the body, and emotion are deeply connected. And I encourage all of you to either go at sunrise or sunset for one of these special viewings. Renée, Susan, thank you so much once again. You've inspired us, you've educated us, and we are so grateful for your time and your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.